Sanchuniathon is the purported Phoenician author of 3 lost works originally in the Phoenician language, surviving only in partial paraphrase and summary of a Greek translation by Philo of Byblos, according to the Christian bishop Eusebius of Caesarea. These few fragments comprise the most extended literary source concerning Phoenician religion in either Greek or Latin. Phoenician sources, along with all of Phoenician literature, were lost with the parchment on which they were habitually written. He is also known as Sancuniates, the author. All our knowledge of Sanchuniathon and his work comes from Eusebius's paraphrase of Angelica, which contains some information about him along with the only surviving excerpts from his writing, as summarized and quoted from his supposed translator, Philo of Byblos. Eusebius also quotes the Neoplatonist writer Porphyry as stating that Sanchuniathon of Berytus read the truest history about their Jews because he obtained records from Hierombalus, priest of the god Uo, that Sanchuniathon dedicated his history to Abibalus, king of Berytus, and that it was approved by the king and other investigators. The date of this writing being before the Trojan War, approaching close to the time of Moses, when Semiramis was queen of the Assyrians. Thus Sanchuniathon is placed firmly in the mythic context of the pre-Homeric heroic age, an antiquity from which no other Greek or Phoenician writings are known to have survived to the time of Philo. Curiously, however, he is made to refer disparagingly to Hesiod at one point, who lived in Greece, California, 700 BC. The supposed Sanchuniathon claimed to have based his work on collections of secret writings of the Ammonites discovered in the shrines, sacred lore deciphered from mystic inscriptions on the pillars which stood in the Phoenician temples, lore which exposed the truth, later covered up by invented allegories and myths, that the gods were originally human beings who came to be worshipped after the deaths, and that the Phoenicians had taken what were originally names of the kings and applied them to elements of the cosmos, as well as also worshipping forces of nature and the sun, moon, and stars. Eusebius's intent in mentioning Sanchuniathon is to discredit pagan religion based on such foundations, this rationalizing new humoristic slant and the emphasis on Beirut, a city of great importance in the late classical period but apparently of little importance in ancient times, suggests that the work itself is not nearly as old as it claims to be. Some have suggested it was forged by Philo of Byblos himself, or assembled from various traditions and presented within an authenticating pseudepigraphical format, in order to give the material more believable weight. Or Philo may have translated genuine Phoenician works ascribed to an ancient writer known as Sanchuniathon, but in fact written in more recent times. This judgment is echoed by the 1911 Encyclopaedia Britannica, which read that Sanchuniathon belongs more to legend than to history. Not all readers have taken such a critical view. Squire Payne remarked in a preface to Richard Cumberland's Sanchuniathon's Phoenician history the humor which prevailed with several learned men to reject Sanchuniathon as a counterfeit because they knew not what to make of him. His lordship always blamed Philo of Byblos, Porphyry and Eusebius, who were better able to judge than any moderns, never call in question his being genuine. However, that may be much of what has been preserved in this writing, despite the humoristic interpretation given, it turned out to be supported by the Ugaritic mythological texts excavated at Ras Shamra in Syria since 1929. Otto Eisfelder demonstrated in 1952 that it does incorporate genuine Semitic elements that can now be related to the Ugaritic texts, some of which, as shown in our versions of Sanchuniathon, remained unchanged since the 2nd millennium BC. The modern consensus is that Philo's treatment of Sanchuniathon offered a Hellenistic view of Phoenician materials written between the time of Alexander the Great and the 1st century BC, if it was not a literary invention of Philo. In what follows, it is sometimes difficult to tell whether Eusebius is citing Philo's translation of Sanchuniathon or speaking in his own voice. Another difficulty is the use of Greek proper names instead of Phoenician ones and the possible corruption of some of the Phoenician names that do appear. There may be other garblings. The work, the fragments that come down to us contain philosophical creation story, a philosophical creation story traced to the cosmogony of Tautus, whom Philo explicitly identified with the Egyptian Thoth, the first who thought of the invention of letters, and began the writing of records, which begins with Erebus and Wind, between which Eros desire came to be. For this was produced Mo, which seems to be the Phoenician, Geez, Hebrew, Arabic, ancient Egyptian word for death, but which the account says may mean mud. In a mixed confusion, the germs of life appear, and intelligent animals called sophasmen formed together as an egg. Perhaps the account is not clear. Then Mo burst forth into light, and the heavens were created, and the various elements found their stations. Following the etymological line of Jacob Bryant, one might also consider with regard to the meaning of Mo, that according to the ancient Egyptians Ma was the personification of the fundamental order of the universe, without which all of creation would perish. She was also considered the wife of Thoth. Allegorical culture or heroes, Copius and his wife Baau give birth to Eon and Protagonus, who were mortal men, and that when droughts occurred, they stretched out their hands to heaven towards the sun. For him alone they regarded as God, the Lord of heaven, calling him Belsamin, which is in the Phoenician language Lord of heaven, and in Greek Zeus. A race of Titan-like mountain beings arose, sons of surpassing size and stature, whose names were applied to the mountains which they occupied, and they got the names, he says, from the mothers, as the women in those days had free intercourse with any whom they met. Various descendants are listed, many of whom have allegorical names but are described in the quotations from Philo as mortals who first made particular discoveries or who established particular customs. The history of the gods. The work includes a genealogy and history of various northwest Semitic deities who were widely worshipped. Many were listed in the genealogy under the names of the counterparts in the Greek pantheon, or in Hellenized forms of the Semitic names, or both. The additional names given for some of these deities appear usually in parentheses in the table below. Only equations made in the text appear here, but many of the hyperlinks point to the northwest Semitic deities that are probably intended. See the notes below the table for translations of the unlinked and several other names. Elion equals Berad +++, Uranus equals GE ++++++++, Anobret equals Elis, Cronus, Batylus, Uranus equals Dagon, Atlas, Astarte equals Elis equals Rebaltes equals Elis, Iud, Persephone, Athena, Sadidus, Demerus, Siddiq equals Titanides, Pothos, Eros, 7 sons, Muth, daughters, Melcathus, Caberias, Clepias, Elis, Nereus, Cronus, Zeus, Belus, Apollo, Pontus, Poseidon. Translations of Greek forms. Aratrios, of husbandry, farming, autochthon, produced from the ground, epigus, from the earth, Eros, desire, ge, earth, Hypsistos, most high, Pluto, wealthy, Pontus, sea, Pothos, longing, Citon, grain, Thanatos, death, Uranus, sky. Notes on etymologies. Anno Brett proposed connections include yn equals spring by Renan and to Annat Rabbit equals Lady Annat by Clemin iud, perhaps from a Phoenician cognate of Hebrew yd equals only, or of Hebrew yd equals beloved, as in the Greek and Hittite theogonies. Sanchuniathon zealous. Cronus overthrows his father Skia Uranus and castrates him. However, Zeus Demarus, that is Hadad Raman, purported son of Dagon but actually son of Uranus, eventually joins with Uranus and wages war against Cronus. To L. Cronus is attributed the practice of circumcision. Twice we are told that L. Cronus sacrificed his own son. At some point Peace's maidens Eusedados and Astarte reign over the land with Cronus's permission. An account of the events is written by the Cabarian by Asclepius, under Thoth's direction. About serpents. A passage about serpent worship follows, in which it is not clear what part is from Sanchuniathon and what part from Philo of Byblos. The nature then of the dragon and of serpents Althus himself regarded as divine, and so again after him did the Phoenicians and Egyptians, for this animal was declared by him to be of all reptiles most full of breath and fiery, in consequence of which it also exerts an unsurpassable swiftness by means of its breath, without feet and hands, or any other of the external members by which the other animals make the movements. It also exhibits forms of various shapes, and in its progress makes spiral leaps as swift as it chooses. It is also most long-lived, and its nature is to put off its old skin, and so not only to grow young again, but also to assume a larger growth, and after it has fulfilled its appointed measure of age, it is self-consumed, in like manner as Tauthus himself has set down in his sacred books, for which reason this animal has also been adopted in temples in mystic rites. On the Phoenician alphabet. A further work of Sanchuniathon noted by Eusebius is a treatise on the Phoenician alphabet. Bibliography. Attridge H.W. Oden, Jr. R.A. Philo of Byblos, The Phoenician History, Introduction, Critical Text, Translation, Notes, CBQMS 9. Washington, D.C., The Catholic Biblical Association of America. Baumgarten, Albert Irwin, The Phoenician History of Philo of Byblos, A Commentary, EPRO, 89, Leiden, E.J., Brill, Ebach, J. Weltensschihung und Kulturentwicklung bei Philo von Byblos. Betrachtung zur Wissenschaft vom Alten und Neuen Testament, 108. Stuttgart, Berlin, Köln, Mainz, Kohlhammer, Lipinski, E. The Phoenician History of Philo of Byblos. Bibliotheca Orientalis, 40 to 305-310.